Welcome back to the Astrocast. I'm your host, Drew. Today is Wednesday, May 27th, 2026. We have this waxing gibbous moon, almost full. I think she's 88% to be official today. I hope you've all been well. It's been a little weird these last few weeks, hasn't it? We've been going back and forth from video to audio to interview to NEEF to back to forth, and feels good to just sit down and say hello to everybody. I hope you've been doing great in your lives, whatever it is you've been up to. Here in the United States, we just finished up with Memorial Day weekend, which is it's a holiday to honor veterans that had passed away in war or otherwise. But it's oftentimes just used as an excuse for people to drink. So, and it also is a 3-day weekend. So that's nice. But thank you to all of those who have served, both past and present. So I'm your host, Rue. Thank you for tuning in this week to the Astrocast. Got something really cool and special for you this week. I teased a couple weeks ago, or was it last week? Now I can't remember. I teased on the promo for the NEEF episode that I was going to be talking with somebody soon who is going to tell you about an entirely new field of astronomy / astrophotography that you can partake in with pretty much what you would call standard astrophotography tools. So, you know, we'll get into all of the specifics on that when I sit down and talk with my guest today. But before we get there, I wanted to just catch you up on a few things that I have been working on. Longtime listeners in the show probably know that I have been relentlessly preparing my remote rig for its trip to Utah next month. So next month is coming very, very soon. I'm actually only 3 weeks away now from my trip out to Utah. And I found out the observatory is not actually going to be open yet when I arrive. That's unfortunate, but I already have the time off, so I'm going to take advantage of it. I'm going to go out and I'm going to see those dark skies, and we'll hook up with Nathan while we're there, and I'll drop off my scope, and hopefully everything will go off without a hitch regardless, even if it takes a little bit longer to wrap things up. That's how it is with construction, unfortunately. You surely hope everything will go as planned, but without a doubt, at some point, an inspector is going to say, sorry, but you got to fix this, and that. Ask me how I know. I got a additional housing unit built onto my home just a couple years ago for my mother, who retired and came to live with us. And man, that was something else, man. It took us like 2 years to get a 500 square foot apartment added onto my house. And it was expensive and it took a lot of time. So I can't imagine with a commercial building that it's much easier. So, but that being said, I wanted to fill you guys in on some of the pretty cool stuff that I've been doing with my remote rig. So hopefully you watched the episode where I sat down with Justin and Parrish and we went over how to program Nina to basically be automated entirely by using the advanced sequencer and the target scheduler plugin. And that's kind of what I've been working towards these past few weeks, is just making sure that that is running flawlessly, because ideally after I get my scope up and running in Utah, I'd like to just plug in 10 targets and say, send me my data, which is exactly what we've been working on. But I also added a little bit of new hardware to the rig. So I think last time we spoke, I had the filter wheel installed. And let me tell you, when you go to put your filter wheel on, write down which filter you're putting in each of the bays. I know that sounds super obvious, like duh, of course, Rue, I'm going to write down which is which. But I didn't think about it whenever I went to go plug them into Nina, and I basically put the wrong filters in the wrong bays in Nina, and I ended up I don't want to tell you how many hours I took with the wrong filter. At least it wasn't the dark filter, so I do have usable data nonetheless. But anyway, pay attention when you're doing things with your filter wheel. It will make life easier for you. So I actually have to take my filter wheel off sometime this week and get my Leviathan Spectral Pro off of there, because that baby will be of no use where this telescope is going. Luckily, we don't have any, well, very little light pollution to contend with out in Utah. There's going to be light pollution everywhere, but this is about as good as it gets in America. So I definitely will not be sending out the Spectral Pro. What I have been doing, though, is rebuilding my 135 rig, and I am planning to use the Spectral Pro specifically with that rig in the backyard. But getting back to the remote rig, one of the other items that I added on, I actually added a couple of things since we last talked, I believe. So, a few months back, I recommended SV Boney sold a very good power box for about $50. You could pick it up on Amazon and everything. I found out they actually have a pro model of that too, which is a lot smarter in that it actually works with Nina. It has more ports on it. They are addressable ports, which is hugely important, meaning you can turn them on and off remotely, including dew heater ports. So specific like RCA jack plugs for your dew heaters, and then a USB hub if you need extra USB ports. Luckily, my mini PC has like 7 USB ports on it, so I think I'm good on that. But nonetheless, I wanted to have something where I could address each power port. And it's kind of funny the way that it ended up working out, because the mount, the AM3, it won't be powered off the SV241 Pro, the SV Boney power box / switch. I guess switch is what it actually is. That's what they call it in Nina. And after talking it over with the Discord, if you'd like to join the Discord, by the way, you can go to patreon.com/the Astrocast. We'd love to have you. Everybody seemed to agree that like the best bet was just to power the mount on its own. And then I started reading even more about it. And a lot of folks power their mini PC on its own. Now, I will say I've been running my mini PC off of the SV241 Pro for a few weeks now with 0 problems. So I don't think that I'm going to switch that up now, because it seems to be working perfectly fine. And one thing I have learned about building remote rigs is when something is working perfectly fine, just leave it alone. There's no need to overcomplicate it by buying more complicated things or changing things up at the last minute because you think it might be a more clever way to connect. If it works, let it be. That's one thing that I have definitely learned. The other thing that I was able to add is a rotator. So I did end up going with the ZWO rotator, just because mainly it was the most affordable one. I strongly considered getting the Wander Astro model rotator. I understand it's even a little bit thinner and its profile than the ZWO model is, but after finding a couple videos on YouTube where somebody was using the rotator with the SQA 55 telescope without any issues, I was like, okay, this is the rotator for me. And it was at a price that I could afford. So that pretty much sealed the deal on that. Now, in doing that, I kind of just broke my previous cardinal rule, which is if something works, don't mess with it. And adding a rotator, let me tell you, it definitely complicates things a bit, because it gives you a lot more to think about in terms of calibration frames, for one thing. Taking flat frames at the right angle is very important, particularly if you switch targets throughout the night, which with target scheduler being a thing, I will definitely be switching targets throughout the night here and there. But what the reason I wanted to bring it up was because I initially had a lot of confusion and a really hard time just getting the basics for this rotator in Nina, because there wasn't a very good set of instructions that came with it for Nina. They expect you to use it with the ASI Air, and that's understandable because that's what they make. But it does have everything that you need as far as like ASCOM drivers and what have you to work in Nina. I just didn't have clear instructions for how to like set the 0 on it, for example, so I knew exactly where I was going. So every time it would rotate, it would go this way and that way, and sometimes it would spin a full circle, and sometimes it would go in the opposite direction, and I couldn't make sense of it because I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So after searching for a while, I finally found a YouTube video where somebody perfectly explains how the rotator works and how to set it up. Long story short, there's a configure button that you need to press in Nina on the rotator page. And from there is a button inside that menu that allows you to reset to default. And that essentially takes it to its 0 position, wherever it currently is. So you basically line it up in the position that you want it to be in while it's at its, resting place, if you will. You hit reset, that sets it to 0, and then you can set like 180 degrees of motion like I did, for example, and then test it out. So if there is anyone out there who has had that struggle similar to me, I will post a link for that video in the show notes so you can check it out, because it was really frustrating for me to deal with. And I hate when I don't understand something. It drives me nuts. Speaking of not understanding things, I was listening a little bit to the interview that you're about to hear. I said at one point that I thought Nina might be on Mac. I was very wrong about that. I was thinking of PixInsight, because I know you can run PixInsight on Mac, but Nina is a Windows-only program. Now, I don't know if you can use like a Wine or something, or like a VM perhaps, to run it within a Mac, but natively speaking, Nina is a Windows-only program. And the reason I mentioned that is because one of the questions that came up was around whether or not this is something that can be done on a Mac. Now, I will tell you, I definitely think it is something that can be done on a Mac, and I hope that you will look through all of the links that I'm going to post in the show notes for this week, because they are going to include all of the information that you need to know to get started in this particular field of study, if you will. I have not had a chance to actually try it myself yet. I'm planning to very soon. But like I said, I am going to be leaving for Utah in about under 3 weeks. So that's going to be crazy. At the same time, while that's going on, my buddy Mark, who's also been on the show a couple times, is going to be going over to Europe and meeting up with several of our listeners over there and members of our Discord family. And it's going to be really cool because we're going to be on opposite sides of the globe at dark sky locations. And he's going to see if he can pick up a little bit of audio while he is out there as well. So a lot to look forward to. I will ask for a little bit of grace in the coming weeks because I will be traveling a good bit. I do expect that we're going to record some really awesome stuff because, guys, I am going to like some ridiculously dark skies where zodiac light should be like annoyingly bright, per cleardarksky.com. By the way, I remember mentioning a couple weeks ago how the light pollution map had become just like a disgusting giant board of ads, and that's 100% correct still, to be clear. I just want to say I've been using cleardarksky.com for several weeks in a row now, and I've gotten so used to it. I actually prefer it over how light pollution map used to work. There's a couple key differences, but with Rick and Jeff at the helm, I'm sure they'll update it wherever they feel is necessary to make sure that it is competitive in today's industry, if you will. But it's a great website is what I'm getting at. And I was very, very happy to see that nice, big, dark area that I'm going to be in. This drive is going to be nuts, y'all. So originally, me and Parrish were going to meet in Minneapolis. I was going to fly up there, and then me and him were going to drive all the way out to Utah together, about 3 days drive. But I didn't want to buy a flight because I wasn't really sure of if we'd be able to go, because I wasn't sure when the building would be done and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, long story short, we had both decided to drive, and just a couple days ago, Parrish asked if he'd like to meet up partway through the drive and then ride together the rest of the way. So, of course, I said yes. That's going to make the trip so much more fun, having another Astro Geek there to talk with the whole time. And we're going to meet up with Nathan from Astro Peak. And after that, we're going to probably head out to the Canyonlands in Utah. That's where I'm hoping to go anyway. I mean, I'm going to be open to everything. I know we're going to be in a really incredible place with a lot of incredible national parks. I'm going to be going wide field on this trip. Big surprise. You guys know I love wide field stuff. That's what I was talking about earlier when I said I was rebuilding my 135 rig. So I got my Astrodinium mount kit out today. I actually went on their website because I was missing a couple of screws from it from last time when I took it apart. And I saw that they were up to like version 6 now, and it had these like crazy connectors. So good job for them. I'm glad that they're still making new iterations of it and that it's doing better and better. But anyway, I got that together. I found the screws that I needed. Why do I have such a hard time getting the back focus right on that darn lens? It's 44 millimeters because it's the Canon EF version. And the 294 MC Pro, which is the camera that I like to run on that rig, has 6.5 millimeters by default. It comes with an 11 millimeter ring if you want to have a female connector on the end. But then the filter drawer is 21 millimeters. So look, I'm already busting out my calculator here because this has been driving me crazy all week. That brings us to 38.5, I believe. So it's still like 6 short, 5.5 short of perfect 44 millimeters. Now, I think I found a spacer that will work. But if any of you guys have this exact same setup, it's basically I replaced the flange on the back of the lens so I didn't have to use the ZWO kind that kind of clips on because I was getting really bad tilt with that. So I put a proper M48 thread on the back of the lens, and I screw my filter wheel onto that, which is 21 millimeters. And then, you know, I guess I just need 16.5 millimeters to get it perfectly to 44, I believe. But there's none that are female to female. And that's what I need, because the 294, if you take off the 11 millimeter ring that it comes with from ZWO, it has a male connection on the end. It has like a male M42 threading, I believe. Might be 48. I'm pretty sure it's 42 though. Anyway, if you've got a similar setup where you've replaced the flange with a proper M48 flange to screw on an M48 adapter, and you use a filter drawer, let me know what your solution was, because I've obviously shimmed my way to making it work before, and that's probably what I'll end up doing again. Honestly, part of me considered just putting my Canon R5 on the back, because when you take the 135 and you put a full frame camera behind it, it frames up Rho and the Blue Horsehead Nebula perfectly. And I'm telling you, from a really dark sky location, like a Bortle 1 type site, that's going to be absolutely incredible. So I'm definitely really looking forward to this trip. I haven't had a dark sky trip in a couple of years now, because I wasn't able to go last summer. And then the prior summer before that was the last time we did our coastal trip. So definitely looking forward to this. This is a big one. We're coming up to the 100th episode of the Astrocast. I don't know if that will end up coinciding with it. I certainly hope that we're able to make that happen. But yeah, man, a lot of cool stuff is going on for sure. Speaking of cool stuff, let me take a moment to thank two of our new members on the Patreon. That would be Jesse and Sean. Thank you guys both so much for supporting the show. Glad to have you in the Discord and just super glad to have you as part of the family. It's super cool to have you here. And the group continues to grow. You know, what can we say? It gets better and better every week. David, I wanted to send you a thank you as well. I don't know if yeah, I did hear back from you. That's right. You're in the chat already. My bad. I was thinking of the other David. Anyway, welcome to the group. Dr. Dave, Sean, and Jesse. You're all very, very welcome to be part of the Astrocast family. Certainly happy to have you here. Also wanted to send a big thank you to anyone and everyone who has used the affiliate links over the last 12 months. I put them at the top of every episode. And if you ever need to make any sort of astronomy purchase, you can click on one of those affiliate links and you'll get the same pricing you otherwise would, but a small percentage of the profit will end up going to the Astrocast. And that helps me do things like take the forthcoming dark sky trip and go to NEAF and all the cool things that I'm starting to be able to do because of you guys' awesome support. I just had one come in through Agena that was pretty significant. And I just want to say thank you so much for thinking about me when you placed your order. So with all that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Pastru. I'm going to introduce my guest. I'll just say his name is Jorik. He is from the Netherlands. He actually emailed me kind of out of the blue one day, and the topic that he brought up just completely gripped me, and I was instantly fascinated. I hope you will be too, because I seriously think this is so, so cool, and I cannot wait to have one of my own charts. But I'll leave it at that for now. I hope you enjoy this week's episode, and we'll be back soon. I am your host, Rue. Thanks so much for tuning in this week to the Astrocast. We tend to keep it pretty loose on the interviews, obviously, which is great. I'm glad that you're on the same page with that. So when you emailed me, you immediately piqued my interest because what you said is something that has always fascinated me, and I've always wondered, because I've heard about people doing this, but I've never actually met somebody who's actually done it. So first, why don't you introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your background?
You mean my background in astrophotography, I presume?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so my name's Jorik. I'm from the Netherlands, as you can probably tell from my accent. But I got into astrophotography in around 2019, just before the pandemic hit. So I got in with buying my first telescope just before the prices went up. And after that, I got into visual astronomy. So I was just looking at it and dialing in I got an equatorial mount with the telescope. So I dialed in the RA and deck axis just by hand and just fiddling with the knobs. And that got old really quick. So I upgraded the mount, and then I sold the mount, I got another mount. And yeah, a few setups later, I'm at a primary telescope, a secondary telescope. Sometimes I mount them separately, sometimes I mount them on the same rig. But right now, I'm often just imaging more so than doing visual. I've got two small children. One's almost 4, one's almost 6. So with that, I don't get as much. Thank you. But I don't get as much time as I did before to get into astronomy. So in that case, so astrophotography is easier in that you just put the rig outside, hit a couple of buttons, and let it image all night. So I don't have to babysit it all the time. So nowadays it's mostly astrophotography, and still most of the time doing that, I'm producing pictures. But sometimes I like to step out of the usual and get into either doing measurements or capturing exoplanet transits. So that's what we're talking about tonight.
Exoplanet transits, and that is very, very cool. So exoplanets obviously are planets that are in different solar systems other than our own, which up until recently, we hadn't really discovered more than a handful of. throughout the entire history of astronomy. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. So with the use of larger systems, bigger telescopes, more funding going to astronomy, it's really skyrocketed. And then there's all these insanely expensive and intricate gear that just constantly sweeps the sky looking for these things. So yes, we can still image it with our amateur gear at home, but then there's these huge projects funded by governments that just watch the whole sky looking for these things.
That's so cool. So what kind of OTA, what kind of telescope do you actually have?
So I've got two at the moment. My bigger telescope is a 140 millimeter, so 5.5 inch, I think, aperture,
Nice.
and then a 980 millimeter focal length. So natively it works at f7, and then with the optional 0.8 reducer, it comes around f5.6 with a 784 millimeter focal length.
Very nice.
Then the secondary rig I have is a smaller one. It's the Space Cat 51, so a brother to the famous Red Cat 51, just the gray version. And I got one, I think, when it first came out. So right now you have the newer adapted focuser, which is a side-mounted focus like the usually get in these telescopes. But back when I got it, it still had the helical focuser, so it looks a little bit like a camera lens where you just twist the whole barrel to focus in and out. So I got that one, which makes it insanely more difficult. Well, not insanely. It makes it a bit more difficult to mount an autofocuser or something else to it.
Tell me about it. I've got the
Astrocast
55, and it also has that type of focuser. So when I mounted my autofocuser on it, I dealt with the same issues. So
yeah, you got to mount the belt and everything.
But I guess what I'm getting at though is you've got basically, I mean, very nice, but standard amateur astrophotographer gear, right?
Definitely, and at least the bigger telescope I have is not the entry model that you would need to capture like planets orbiting different suns or different stars to our own. It's possible up from, I think, 60 to 80 millimeters aperture. So a very standard, very modest backyard telescope can actually capture these things. No problem.
So with just like a 80 millimeter refractor, you can actually capture an exoplanet.
Definitely. You'd have to be on the lookout for what types of host stars, how large the planet is, and how close it orbits the other star. But it's definitely possible with smaller gear. Yeah.
That's incredible. So let me ask you this. First of all, congratulations on being like the first person I've ever talked to that got into astrophotography and astronomy right before the pandemic instead of after it, because like all of us dived in right after COVID. So that's really cool. You're one of the few there. What was it that got you into this? Because it's such a fascinating topic. Were you just like looking around on the internet and you stumbled across it, or like how did you get into this specifically?
So spotting exoplanet transits specifically?
Yeah. For transits and exoplanets.
I think I saw a post on Reddit first of someone doing it, and I saw in between all of the nice shots and the deep sky objects, I saw this weird graph of someone that had a little dip in the middle. I thought, okay, what's that? What's it got to do with astrophotography? So I went around and looked at what it is that they did. So they captured what we know is an exoplanet transit. And I was wondering, okay, I've got a telescope. Why don't I try this? Because I'm always on the lookout for new ways to use my telescope, and I like fiddling around with gear and putting it to new use. Yes. And this is just what I think is an amazing way to put your gear to other use, just besides capturing fancy images.
Man, I couldn't agree more. So I think, one thing that I did and one thing that I'm trying to do more of as we do more interviews on the show is I've been trying to post in our Discord an area where people can ask questions for upcoming interviews. Obviously a couple of them are things that are, I think things that are going to naturally come up during our conversation. But one of the things, I guess kind of the biggest question that you would have around exoplanets that John actually asked is, how do you correctly identify and verify and me and you kind of got into this a little bit over email,
Yeah.
but I would love to hear just a general explanation of how it is that you verify this. So, like, take me through the process from beginning to end, what it takes and how you go about actually doing this.
Okay, so first of all, what I do, and this may differ from how other people go about it, but what I do is, first of all, I would like to find a window of a known exoplanet transit that I can actually image. So yes, you can point your telescope at any random star in the universe and see whether the flux variates, so whether it gets brighter and dimmer, and infer from that whether it's an exoplanet transiting it. But I don't have the time to image all these stars and get around to doing everything. So I use Swarthmore Transit Finder. So it's a website dedicated to this, and it tells you, okay, from data that actual professional astronomers have gathered, what are within a window of, say, the next 3 nights, what are upcoming transits that you could image, and then it gives you a whole table with timestamps, with whether they occur during your local nighttime, which is beneficial, of course. And then, so I cherry pick from that one that fits my gear, and how it does, we'll get into, but something that I could image if I wanted to. Okay, so I have a target. I then go to, like with imaging, to point my telescope at the target. And then, different from deep sky imaging, I don't use long exposures, because the longer we expose, see, for a deep sky object, you want long exposure times because you want to get the faintest detail, and you want to gather integration time.
Yeah.
But for exoplanets, you just want to see the variance and brightness of a star. So you do not want the star to saturate. So whenever pixels within the star get clipped, it just becomes all white, and there's no way to tell whether it's got a little bit brighter or darker. So it's useless. So what you do is you image just below saturation of a star, so no pixels within the star get clipped, and then you defocus a bit.
That's real quick.
Sorry.
How do you determine when a star is at saturation? Does it? I mean, okay. I would imagine it varies from star to star, right? Depending on how bright that star is.
Yeah. So within Nina, I use Nina to run my gear. I don't use ASIR, but I'm sure that ASIR has other options to do something similar. But within Nina, I look at my my statistics for every sub that comes in. So I see the mean value for pixels. I see the maximum value for pixels. And if I see that no pixels are clipped, or like 2 pixels are clipped, then I know, okay, my stars aren't saturated yet. So I dial it in with gain and exposure time. So a handful of pixels, if at all, are clipped within an image.
Gotcha. Okay, sorry. Go right ahead.
So when I have the settings dialed in, I then image, and I image from about half the duration of a transit before and half the duration of a transit after. So I have a baseline what the star's brightness should be. And then obviously I image during the whole transit period. And then, okay, so in your data, you see the star dipping in brightness. It's not that you visually see it, because if I would look to the subs, and even if I would blink the subs within PixInsight, I wouldn't see the star brightness change, because it's a tiny, tiny amount that it weakens. So the last transit I captured, it was a 1.6% decrease in brightness. So a teeny, tiny amount. I can't see it visually, but the software can, and that's where you take the measurements for.
Now,
what was I talking about?
There's a comparison that gets made, though, because
exactly
you have this 1.6% variance, obviously, and you can't see what that is. Obviously, software can tell that it's dimmer, but you still have to have that known variable that's nearby. And this was the part that I found so fascinating, that is really the key to verifying that you've actually nailed it, right?
Exactly, because if you would only measure that one star, then you would get variance for every single star that you capture, because you have local seeing variation, you have local transparency variation. But the nice thing is, all the stars in your image do the same thing. So if it's locally that stars get brighter or dimmer, then every star in the image would do so. So we take stars that we know are not variable, and we compare to those. So if we pick a star within the field of which we know it shouldn't change in brightness, and then every time it does, we correct for that. So if the image gets dimmer overall with the non-variable stars, then we crank up the brightness, and if it gets brighter, then we crank down the brightness. So the non-variable stars stay the same. Then we know if a star switches or changes in magnitude in brightness, then we know something's happening there. It's not local, it's the star doing something. And that could either be a star being variable or an exoplanet transiting and like doing a partial eclipse light years away.
That is so cool. So just the fact that we have a non-variable star in that same field of view, we can basically use math to calculate for that difference. And
yeah,
is
to calculate an
Nina,
offset, if you will.
Say again?
To calculate an offset, if you will.
For every exactly, to calculate the offset. And is Nina able to do that for you automatically, essentially? Is there like a plugin that you can use, or do you have to work out the math yourself, or like how do you go about doing that?
Well, luckily I don't have to do it myself.
Yeah, I was going to say it's got to be a lot
as far as I know, Nina doesn't do it either. But there's a website that you can use, and maybe we can share the link to it. That you can it's a Google Forms, and it just asks you step by step, okay, please supply me with your light frames. Please supply me with your flat frames. And you just give it all the data and the times and location and the dates for everything. And it calculates for you the offsets, and it processes the data to a certain extent. Yeah.
Man, that is so cool. That is incredible. So when was the last time that you were able to image an exoplanet transit?
Well, the last one I think was the one we talked about. So that was WASP 14b, and I took that image. Just let me check real quick. Yeah, that was April 14th.
April 14th. That is so cool.
Yeah.
And do you keep a record of all the ones that you have been able to confirm over time?
Exactly. Yeah. So next to my images, my deep sky astrophotography, I keep a folder for exoplanets. I just log all the data, and I gather all the graphs that I do.
I love that. So, I mean, this seems like an entire another layer that we as amateur astronomers can dig into that a lot of people probably haven't even thought about or considered, but seems like incredibly fascinating. And is there a citizen science aspect to this, if you will, where we can actually contribute as well?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I was really thrilled that I captured it at all. So I was sharing it with friends and family, like, look what I did. And then you show people a line with a single dip in it, and they're like, what's that? Usually you come up with these photos of planets and nebulae and stars, but what's this? This is just a graph. And I was like, no, I captured an actual exoplanet orbiting another star. And I was really, really amazed at it. But yeah, just besides that, sharing it with lay people and people that don't know as much about it, you can also contribute to science. So there's a citizen science project within NASA called Exoplanet Watch that you can upload your data to, and there's an automated way in doing this. So it tells you what data it needs for the project, and then they use that data from us amateurs to refine the data they have from professional observatories. So how do they do that? They use our data to better allocate time, like dedicated, expensive time on optics like Hubble telescope, James Webb Space Telescope, so they can more easily know, okay, this is the transit window, or we should aim this professional telescope at that star for this time because of the data that we amateurs captured. So it refines the data we already have from professional observatories, and then we use that to better predict next transits, or maybe it could serve as an indication that it's not just one planet, but it's a multiple planet system around another star. So they actually use our data to refine their professional work. Yeah.
Wow. Now, I know this is going to vary greatly, but I'm curious, like, how long are these transits that are taking place? I mean, obviously it's going to vary quite a bit depending on the size of the star, the size of the planet, etc. But like, I'm trying to picture in my head, are we talking minutes, hours?
Okay, so it varies. As you say, it
Yeah.
varies. If I clicked open the webpage that I use to find my transits, it varies from 8 minutes, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 50 minutes, an hour. So it's definitely doable within a single night. You don't have to image from from nightfall till
Yeah.
early morning. You can definitely do it within the time that you would stay up for yourself as well.
Yeah. Man, that is so cool. I definitely have to try this, and I already have the gear, as I would imagine a lot of the listeners of the
A
show
lot of
already
people
do
do.
as well.
Yeah. If you talk to people about this, they always assume, okay, you need this big gear, you need this huge telescope, a heavy mount, you need to go in the thousands of dollars to be able to finance this, but you don't. You could use a simple star tracker and a small amateur telescope to get into this.
That's so awesome, and it's just an entire another layer that I've honestly never even considered, because I just assumed that was way beyond the reach of mere mortals. And it's so funny, man. Astrophotography was something, just 6 years ago that I assumed was way beyond the reach of mere mortals, until one day
Yeah, and that feels like a similar step somehow. So when you
right?
first see the images online, you say, okay, maybe I could do that myself, and you buy a telescope and you buy a camera first and a small star tracker. Okay, I can see stars and they're not trailing. Wow, that's a big win. And then you move up from that, and this just feels like a whole leap forward again in developing your hobby.
It really does. Um, so tell me a little bit about your astrophotography journey that you have been on. Have you gotten to do anything in particular that you really have enjoyed? Have you gone on any dark sky trips? What's it like to image in the Netherlands, for example?
So I I don't image with other people often, so I haven't been to star parties that much. Um, like the night before last, I went with two friends and just observed visually for a while. But I haven't been to like these huge, what I hear about in the US, these huge star parties where you have hundreds or maybe even thousands of people gathering together and just imaging or observing together. I haven't done that per se. Most of the time imaging I spend on my own, in the backyard or the roof terrace that I have. I just pick up my mount with the whole telescope, walk six
Yep.
feet and put it down again and just image for a night. Um, and I don't have a permanent setup either. I don't have an observatory. I don't have a pier installed. I don't have a dome. I don't have anything fancy like that. It's just a
That's
tripod,
awesome.
a mount, a telescope, and
I
I lug
love
it
it.
out. I put it down and I image. Yeah.
I love it. And that just goes to show, like, you don't need all of this other. There's so many people that make excuses for themselves. And I'm not saying this to be insulting to anyone. That's not what I mean. But what I mean is, like, we build up these walls inside of ourselves that really hold us back from doing the things that we love, because we tell ourselves, like, oh, I can't image 3 nights a week because I don't have a pier, or because I don't have an observatory. Like, build yourself a rig that you can carry yourself. I've got one just like you. Just for the record, I've never been to one of those giant star parties either. I'd like to go to one day. But I'm more of a solo imager too.
Yeah.
I think the biggest one that I've been to probably had, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 people down at the Charlotte club that I'm a member of. But I prefer to go in smaller groups just because it's more intimate and quiet. And I prefer the peace and quiet of nature. There's something more intimate about that, in my opinion, but everybody's different. And I would like to go to one of the giant, like, Okie Tex star parties out in Texas one day and check that out. But yeah, there's something to be said for being able to do, like, actual scientific work by just carrying your mount outside and setting up on your roof terrace. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, and I suppose it does qualify as scientific work, but as soon as you tell
Absolutely.
people it is science or it sounds like science, especially amateur imagers might get scared off. So, I can't do that. I'm just an amateur. I have a small telescope, a simple camera. I can't do this, but you can. You can actually do this. It is possible, and I would urge people that hear this and would like to try it for themselves just to go to the URL that we will share and have a go at it. Just try it, and you will be amazed at what you can just do with your backyard telescope, because it is possible.
I got to tell you, I cannot wait to try it out myself. I'm dying to be able to share that dip. I want to see if I can actually do it and capture a transit. When you first started talking to me about this, I was like, I wonder if this is even possible for someone like me to do, because like, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love astrophotography, but there is a part of me that recognizes, like, as soon as we stretch that image, it loses all of its scientific value. You know what I mean? As far as, clipping, like we were just talking about a minute ago, you're stretching it, you're making art at that point. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's beautiful. You still see the structure and the form and the nebulosity, in the environment.
But it's a different goal entirely.
Yeah, exactly. But if there is an entire different arena that we can get into with the equipment that we already have, then why wouldn't we give it a go, right? And it sounds like it's eminently doable. And not for nothing, guys, but like, this is another instance in which Nina, like, give it a try. Like, because it sounds like a lot of these tools are available within Nina. That, like you said, I'm sure you could do this with an ASI Air by taking shorter exposures and finding out where the saturation point is. But probably a lot easier to do within Nina at the end of the day.
Well, as I said, I have no experience in ASI Air. I'm sure that they tell you statistics about every sub that comes in as well. And if ASI Air doesn't do it, then you could download the image from your ASI Air to your device and just check out the properties, or within Pixentide, import it and look at it there. So I'm sure that you can do it within ASI Air or other software as well.
I've been so impressed with Nina lately. I've been getting more and more into it. And did you happen to watch any of the video with me and Justin and Parrish talking about Nina that we put up a few weeks ago? You may or may not have. You did? Okay. Yeah. So he was basically automating Parrish's workflow for his telescope that's going out to the observatory, the remote observatory at Astropeak. And I was basically just along for the ride on that episode.
Mm-hmm.
But afterwards, like a few nights later, I was like, all right, let me sit down and actually do mine now. And I couldn't remember everything, obviously, because there was a lot to it. But I downloaded the actual sequencer file, and then I set up Target Scheduler, and I started poking around in there. And long story short, like 2 weeks later, I've got pretty much everything dialed in now, and I've added a rotator to my telescope. I've got a switch now, which is just awesome because it adds so much more that I can do. And I've basically got it now where I can just press the play button and that's it. I mean, I pick which targets I want. I set the priority for those targets. I can even indicate, moon avoidance. I can indicate which filters I want to use. And I can say, I want to get 1,000 images of this. I want 1,000 images of that. And then every morning when I wake up, I have a text message waiting on my phone that says, here's your nightly summary. Here's how many images you got. Here's how far along you are in the project. I mean, it's just incredible. And like,
it's amazing how far technology has come.
What's that?
Yeah. I said, it's amazing how far technology has come that we can just do this.
Truly.
And even just astrophotography in itself. And then it's a step up to science, and it's a step up. I'm eager to see what direction amateur astrophotography is going to take next, because there's so many people involved, and it just keeps on adding. Even the plugins in Nina just keep adding. The options that you have with your backyard telescope just pile up. There's so much stuff that I would like to do that I haven't tried yet.
There's just not enough time. That's the only issue that I always run into. It's like there's so much more that I would love to do and try, but there's just never enough time to do it all. This hobby is just so endlessly fascinating, but we just never seem to have enough time to try all the things that we want to. I was just checking over the Discord here to see if there's any other questions on here. I know we touched on a couple of them. Let me see. So Andy actually asked if this is a good question, actually. Have any amateurs actually discovered an exoplanet? I don't know how likely that is, because that kind of points to what you said earlier, just pointing at a random star and hoping for the best. But do you know if anyone has ever discovered one?
Not that I've heard of. I'm sure that it happens, because there's so many different stars and there's just so little that we know so far.
Yeah.
And even just the fact that us amateurs collecting data helps the professional observatories move on to the next step.
Yeah.
That fact alone tells me there's so much left to find out there. So it's bound to happen sooner or later. And the more people that hear this and get triggered to try it themselves, the more eyes we have pointing at the new stars we don't know. So
could you imagine
it's definitely possible.
All the remote observatories that are out there now, like, consider how many thousands of telescopes that are set up in remote observatories. Like, if all of them started doing this for, a few hours a week, they would definitely be discovering them then. I have no doubt about that. Let's see. We definitely talked about citizen science and transit. So thank you for asking about that, Acererak, and the affiliation with NASA. We definitely talked about that. Let's see. Another thought. Is this something Mac users can do, or is it a Windows only club? I think Nina's available for Mac, isn't it? Pretty sure it is.
I think it is.
Yeah, and then the Google Doc is obviously available for Mac. So yeah, you could absolutely do it on Mac Acererak. So good question. What's next for you in this journey? What are you hoping to accomplish over the coming Milky Way season? Do you have any goals in mind, or are you hoping to? Do you have any particular exoplanets that you're hoping to capture a transit of?
Not particular ones, but particular types of systems. So I wouldn't say I've done it. I finished it. I definitely haven't. I don't think there is something like finishing it. But a dream of mine is capturing like a multiple planet system. So within a transit, you just see one planet moving in front of the disk of its host star. So if you were able to see like multiple dips, or a dip that gets even deeper within its transit, then that would point to different, like, compare it to what you see in Jupiter. So a lot of amateurs have imaged or looked at Jupiter, and you see double shadow transits all the time. So that, but further away, and just multiple stars, including their host star, multiple planets, including their host star at the same time. That's something that's still on a bucket list, for example.
That's so cool. What about like a binary
As you can imagine, that's even rarer than just finding a transit. So
could you capture a binary system?
Like you can capture binary, if you mean binary stars, like occluding each other, then it works the same way. So instead of a planet occluding a star disk behind it, it's two stars which have a shared magnitude. So together they have a certain magnitude of brightness. And then if one passes in front of the other, if the larger star occludes the smaller, you get a tinier dip. And if the smaller star occludes the light, you get a deeper dip.
So that's so cool.
That works the same way. It's just anything that occludes a star or part of a star for a duration of time, you could theoretically capture. It's just whether we have the equipment to do so. So maybe coming back to that, if you look at what our amateur equipment is able to do, if you have like a general 60 to 80 millimeter aperture refractor, you could detect 1 to 3% decrease in brightness and magnitude. So that's definitely doable with a small amateur refractor. If you go up to 80 to 100 millimeters, so a bit more serious, you can get 0.7 to 2% roughly.
Wow.
100 to 140, you get 0.3 to 1% in transit depth. And then up to 140 up to 200 millimeters, it's 0.1 to 0.5% roughly. And then beyond that, it doesn't really lowers anymore. And that's due to like local conditions. So seeing, transparency, noise. So those factors come into play, and adding more aperture doesn't magically solve seeing. So seeing is always something we deal with, even in astrophotography, in deep sky astrophotography, and in this, it's the same thing. So having a 14 or 16 inch mega telescope doesn't help you detect smaller, like Earth-like planets. That doesn't
makes
happen.
sense. There's still going to be limits, and physics is still physics, no matter what you're dealing with, I suppose.
So that's up to incredible. 140, 150, so 5.5, 6 inch about aperture. Up to that, you can definitely see improvements. And then you can see like Jupiter type planets and then Neptune type planets. So the planets get relatively smaller that you can detect. But we're never going to find an Earth-sized planet from the ground. That you will need space telescopes to do that.
Yeah,
to do so.
I mean that makes sense. And not for nothing, but when you look at the cost of refractors, like large refractors, they have come down so much in recent years. I think about like the giant ASCAR refractors and like how affordable they are when you consider, how much glass you're getting for the cost. It's unreal.
That's exactly the reason I ended up with my ASCAR. I got an ASCAR 140.
Okay, is that what you have, an ASCAR
so 140? I bought that. Yeah.
That's awesome. How do you like it?
I think it's amazing. It does have a caveat in that if you tighten the ring that sets the dew shield, the stars tend to spike on one end. So
really?
I have to slightly, so it pushes on the tube and the lens cell.
Makes
sense. If I loosen the screw a tiny bit, then that goes away. So I don't have a problem with that. I fix my dew shield most of the time with what's the name? Like a dew ring or a dew strap. Yeah.
Oh, a dew strap. Okay. That makes sense. Just tighten that down evenly all the way around.
I tighten that down, and then I don't need to tighten the screw as much, and then it goes away. So it's nothing I can't deal with. But in small things like that, you can see where I wouldn't say cut corners, but where they saved on money to be able to put out a telescope that cheap. Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, I mean,
optically, it's amazing.
Yeah. That is what I've heard. I believe I'm pretty sure Parrish has one of the large ASCAR scopes. He's a good friend of mine, and he's been on the show several times as well. It might be a 140. In fact, you guys might have the same scope. But yeah, they're very, very cool. And I think honestly, the next scope that I end up getting will probably be a larger refractor. And that's definitely where I'm leaning, especially after how much I love my SQA 55. I love that scope. I cannot wait to get it out to Bortle 1 skies, man. It's so funny. Everybody is like, man, you got to put a mono camera on there. You got to put a mono camera on there. I'm so happy to have a one-shot color camera going out to Bortle 1 skies. It's going to be a dark nebula machine out there. It's just going to be sucking those things down night after night. I think it's going to be cool, and I think it's going to be a little bit different than what a lot of people have. So I like something unique,
Yeah. And I'm sure that using a mono camera will add that final bit of extra sharpness. But in astrophotography, the last image I took was M51. I don't know if I've sent you the photo, the finished thing, but I got I used my 140 telescope at native, so at 7. That's 980, almost a meter focal length. I use a tiny pixel camera, the 585.
585.
I think you've got the same.
I have that one.
Yeah. So, and then even that data, I drizzled 3 times to get to the final luminance image. And I don't see mono getting any closer than that. So I'm imaging at 0.3 arc seconds per pixel. So for me, that's plenty sharp. If I blow out my photos like a meter by a meter on the wall, that's more than enough detail that I will need.
Yeah.
So
I'm
and then OSC is just a lot cheaper, a lot easier to work with. It doesn't weigh up for me. And I'm sure that some people say, okay, I need that extra level of detail, that extra level of fidelity. But for me, it's easy enough to going one-shot color. Yeah.
That's me too, in a nutshell. And maybe one day I will change my opinion on it. But for now, it's just, that's where I am. I 100% agree with you. So figures we're in the same boat.
And you will need new filters. You will need, if you haven't already, an electronic focuser. You will need a filter wheel, electronic.
There's so much that you gotta buy.
Yeah.
It's funny. Actually, I did get a filter wheel. for my scope, because if you think about it, even with a one-shot color, if it's a remote rig, you kind of got to have a filter wheel because you got to do darks. I want to have a UV-IR filter for. I know my 2600 has a built-in UV-IR, but I've heard, I've read, etc., that if you run a standalone UV-IR cut filter, you can get higher image quality with it for your stars. And then I also wanted to duo narrowband just because, if I want to shoot duo narrowband. And
have you got different
obviously
dual narrowband filters
open.
then?
What's that?
Have you got different sets of dual narrowband filters? You've got the HA03. Have you got
no, it's just a
one as well?
dual narrowband that has HOD 03. They're not
okay.
Yeah, they're not separate, but one single dual narrowband filter. But I might
maybe
go that
next
route.
to that,
I've been considering it.
So I use dual narrowband as well because I have a one-shot color camera, but I use HA03 as one filter.
Yeah.
But then I think it's S2H beta as well, so I can get SHO using 2 filters rather than 3.
Nice.
So
what brand is it? Antlia or?
Antlia, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I actually saw those in person when I was at NEAF a few weeks ago. And some of the images that they got, and they're incredible filters. I've heard really good things about them.
They're really good at controlling the halo as well on bright stars. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Very, very, very cool. Any favorite targets in the summer season?
Narrowband, broadband, any?
Any. Wide open.
So I've made a note, and maybe that could be a recommendation as well. I've got an Astro target list by month.
Oh, nice.
And any time I see an image I like on Astrobin, I find out, okay, is it high enough in the sky for me? Because sometimes you get the southern constellations, then I can't even do it. But if I see a nice target that is available to me, I just add it to the list where in the middle of the month it's available. So I go January 15th within Stellarium. I see, okay, this is up. This is the best month to image it in. And I add just lists of targets each month. So January, February, every month I have a list of targets that I would like to image in that month. So whenever I see in my weather app, okay, next week there's a clear sky, or there might be a clear night, I just go into my list. Okay, what's the image list for this month? And I pick one.
That's awesome. I really like that idea. I don't know why I haven't done that yet. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've got kind of a list in my head, but it would make sense to actually write down a list, because there's probably countless times where I'm like, okay, what do I want to shoot tonight? And it doesn't occur to me to think of the, beautiful nebulae that I saw 6 months ago when I was on Astrobin or, what have you. So that would probably be a good idea.
What triggered me to set up the list was actually getting the new telescope. So beforehand, I was imaging at a lower focal length. So the teeny tiny NGC galaxies and the smaller targets were out of range. But now that I've got a bigger telescope with a longer focal length, I can go after those small galaxies. So I want to know, okay, I don't know them off by heart. So I know M16, I know M17, I know the Lagoon, the Trifid, all the standard summer targets. But then there's loads of galaxies as well, and I don't know all of them off the top of my head. So I had to get a list going for, okay, I don't know them by heart. Other people do. There's plenty of people on Astrobin and on all the Facebook pages. So I just use what they shoot, find out if it's available to me, and add it to my list.
Oh man, that's smart. And yeah, absolutely, when you get the longer focal length. So I'm a little disappointed in myself because I was gifted a C8, which was just incredibly generous. One of our listeners, Chris, gave it to me. We talked about it on the show. His father passed away and left him his C8, and he gifted it to me because unfortunately he had some medical issues that prevented him from using it. And I've been working on getting it set up, and I was hoping to have it in time for Galaxy season, but I wasn't able to get all the wrinkles worked out in time. But I will definitely have it ready for next Galaxy season. But did you have fun this Galaxy season with your longer focal length? Were you able to see quite a few galaxies?
Yeah, definitely. I got M51. I got the what's it called? NGC 5907. So the tiny galaxy that had a new supernova.
Yes.
Maybe you've seen it in the socials. So I imaged at native as well. making
Oh man, that's gorgeous.
a huge image out of that. So, and even if at lower focal lengths, if you have a camera that has a smaller sensor, you could definitely get those smaller targets up
Yeah,
close. So it
absolutely.
doesn't
I've
have
done
to
it
be a
before.
huge aperture. So a huge
Using
aperture
like
helps
a
you
camera like
in
a 585,
using
right?
yeah, exactly. So having a larger aperture telescope helps you in getting to use larger pixels at that focal length. But if
Yeah.
you can deal with a lower signal from using smaller pixels, you can definitely use smaller telescopes to uh, get further away. Yeah.
This is a passionate argument that people will have. Actually, it's funny. I was on where was I? It might have been. It was. I just Googled the Astrocast one day because I was curious. Let's see what happens when you Google the show, and there's a ton of results now. I was like, yeah, we're doing pretty good. I'm getting results on Google,
Yeah.
and I found some page where people were talking about the show, and they were like, the host doesn't understand how imaging works, and he still talks about focal lengths wrong and da 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 da. And I'm like, whatever, man. I just I put a 585 on a smaller telescope and get a more zoomed in picture, and I'm happy. So call it what you will.
If you're happy to deal with like a lower signal per pixel and you
And
can easily tackle that
I
by adding more
understand the
integration,
physics behind it
it's
and that
fine.
the resolution's not as high, but again, it is a more cropped in photo, but you in lower resolution per pixel. But yeah, exactly. And
And if
me,
anyone
that
tells you
works
you're
for me.
yeah,
Like for example, I'll take my 80 millimeter doublet and I'll throw the 585 on there, and then I can get the pillars. Like I can actually get in on the Eagle Nebula and capture the pillars, and I've got a pretty cool picture of it actually, that I think
and
looks
if you're
pretty
happy with
great.
the result that you get, are you really
Yeah,
doing it
exactly.
wrong? Who's
If
to
you're
say you're
happy,
doing
then
it
you're
wrong?
happy, right?
Yeah.
Oh man. Jorik, do you have anything that you'd like to plug or any socials that you want to share or anything like that?
Not really. I'm active on a few Facebook pages. That's where I
Okay.
mostly post my data. I don't have a paid Astrobin page.
Yeah, that's fine. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
have one
most.
either. I'll tell you what I would like to do though. If you're active on Facebook,
Yeah.
I'll catch up with you on there because I do have a active Astrocast Facebook page, and I can share one of your
Okay.
posts maybe the day that we post this
No
episode.
problem.
So that
Yeah.
way people can check out your work. And then we'll obviously post all of the links from the episode as well.
That'd be lovely. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show. There's actually another topic that we will probably cover another day. But thank you so much for coming on this week and talking with us. It was really cool getting to know you, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was lovely talking to you, and maybe we'll talk another time on something else.
I'm sure we will. Thank you so much, Jorik.
Okay. Thank you.
Another big thank you to Jorik for coming on the show. I do want to add, he has started an Astrobin since we talked. He actually emailed me a couple nights later and said, hey, Rue, you mentioned Astrobin. I got one. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll drop a link to that in the show notes. And I will link mine as well, even though I don't have too much on there yet. I'll go ahead and I'll put it up because now that I'm going to have a remote scope very soon, I won't have light pollution to contend with 24/7. So I'll definitely be able to start adding a little bit more content to my Astrobin. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I hope it inspires you to go out there and kind of capture your own exoplanet. Just knowing that the data is out there for you to compare it against, to verify that that was indeed an exoplanet that you captured. To me, that is like one of the coolest things I've ever heard. So thank you so much, Jorik, for coming on the show and talking about that. I know we have another topic we'll talk about one of these days in the near future, so stay tuned for that. And if you would like to support the show, you can always do that at patreon.com/the Astrocast. And you can also support by using any of the affiliate links posted in the show notes below. That is going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Astrocast. And as always, clear skies.
Wednesday evening, the feed goes live. Rue's voice cuts through the dark like a 135. From backyard scopes to mountain peaks, we're all tuned in, no time to sleep. Red dot finders, coma correctors gain. He breaks it down like it's simple, never pain. Comets rising, planets in the frame. Everywhere